To the May 2025 Pre-Retirement Seminar. My name is Michelle Taylor, and I'm Risk Management Specialist in the Employee Benefits Division here in the Department of Risk Management. We're so glad you're able to join us today and walk through some important steps in planning for your retirement. So before we get started, just a few quick housekeeping items. All participants are in listen-only mode. Your cameras and microphones have been disabled for the duration of this webinar. We'll hold a Q&A session at the end of this presentation. If you have any questions, feel free, please type them into the chat at any time, and we'll answer them in the order in which they're received. Please note that this session is recorded. However, the Q&A portion will not be recorded in order to comply with privacy and compliance guidelines. So here's what we're covering today. So I'm starting with the welcome and then the introduction shortly. The three primary sources of retirement income, including Social Security and planning for retirement, bridging the gap in your retirement income, and then followed by the Q&A session. Again, this part will not be recorded. So it's now my pleasure to introduce today's presenters. We'll start with Gary Ladone. He is the Director of Benefits Administration at the Cook County Pension Fund, followed by Dave Harris, Vice President at the Nationwide Retirement Institute, and Vanessa Gonzalez, Senior Retirement Specialist with Nationwide Retirement Solutions. So let's get started. So I'll now turn it over to Dave to kick off today's presentation.
Good morning. Michelle, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you great.
Wonderful. If you don't mind, if we could go ahead and move forward on the slides to get to the third slide. And while you're transitioning over, everyone, I just want to say good morning and thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. I know this is an investment of your time, and I've done these calls a couple times before, and you're in for some great information. So thank you for joining us. One thing I want to let you know about what I'm going to be talking about today. I'm a part of the Nationwide Retirement Institute, and what my job is to solely really talk about education, all the different things that you need to understand when you're looking to have those last few years of your working career, transitioning into your retirement year, and then living through those retirement years. I say that because I want to make sure that you understand that I'm not here to talk about any types of financial products. That's not my role. If we could, Michelle, let's go on to the next slide. What I am here to talk about today is really four different things. I want to be able to make sure that you have a good understanding on how prepared you are for your retirement. And now I say your retirement because everybody's retirement is different. We're going to talk about how you can identify the income gaps that you're going to have. Because as we start to take a look at retirement, one of the big things that we want to be able to do is we want to be able to have a good understanding of what income needs we have to have, so what we have to have covered, and then the want to haves in retirement, and making sure that we have assets that can create the income for us to cover both of those income needs. We're going to give you some ideas on ways that you can become better prepared. And then we're going to talk about how you can continue contributing to your deferred compensation plan. And if you haven't signed up already, signing up for your deferred compensation plan. So if we could, let's go on to the next slide, Michelle. Building your retirement income. With all the different things we're going to talk about, and if we could go on to the next slide, when you're looking at retirement, for the majority of us, it's a three-legged stool. There are three major components, and you are building those components. Each one of them is your own financial asset. You are creating these assets by trading your time, your energy, your effort for a paycheck. But with that paycheck, you're paying many times into Social Security. Many times you're funding a pension. And for the majority of us, we're taking some of the earnings that we're having from our paycheck in doing contributions into our defined contribution plan. So we're building this stool, or this savings, this retirement savings for ourselves, but it's unique to each and every one of us. Now, before we go on, because the part that I have to cover really is the Social Security piece. But before we move on, I want you to think about what retirement truly is. Now, I've been a part of the Nationwide Retirement Institute since 2007. So my job for going on 20 years is going out and working with people and helping them identify all the different um, main areas when looking to retire. But I started doing retirement income planning before that, all the way back into the late 90s. When my parents decided they were going to retire in 99, I worked with them to get them prepared throughout that year. And then I worked with them throughout their entire retirement. And when you think about this, what you're doing when you're trading your time, your energy, and your effort for a paycheck, you're creating that income for yourself. Before that, many times what's going to happen is you're going to have a parent, a guardian providing that income for you back when we were kids. When we're getting into retirement, what we're doing is we're using these three financial assets to create the income for us so we don't have to trade our time, energy, and effort for that paycheck. So getting into Social Security, if we could, let's go on into the next slide. When you're taking a look at Social Security, it's a great foundation, but it's only a part, like I said, of your overall retirement income plan. Now, Social Security, much like your pension, this can be utilized as a foundation. Think about this as that income replacement from your job. If you think about what you were receiving every time you're paid, it's that many times, and this dates me, I know, going back to the times we used to receive paychecks in the mail, but it's referred to as mailbox money. And we have an idea of what that is. That's that foundation. Well, Social Security and pension can take over some of that loss from, you know, retiring from our jobs. When you look at Social Security, how much of that income you're going to get or how much you're going to receive from Social Security is really determined by your choices. And if we could, let's move on to the next slide. Because when you're looking at Social Security, you can file for your Social Security benefit as early as the month you turn 62 or as late as the month you turn 70 or any month in between those 2 points. All of us are creating our own Social Security benefit from our working career. For me, it goes all the way back to when I was 14. I started at Baskin Robbins, still one of my favorite jobs. A very long time ago. I'll be 40 or 54 this summer, so quite a while back. But I remember in that first check, I started paying into Social Security. I have a 16-year-old daughter who this past weekend just started her first job. And it was funny. I picked her up from her second day. She's working at a nursery for plants and stuff. And we're coming home. She's really tired. Her second 8-hour day was Sunday. We're sitting down. And after Mother's Day, she said, "Dad, so how much am I going to have to pay in taxes?" And I walked her through, federal, state, local, and FICA. And so she's now going to be paying into the system. So we're creating that every year. We pay into Social Security for 10 years. We now have a benefit we can turn on as early as when we turn 62. Now, Social Security, when they're creating our benefit amount, it's referred to as your primary insurance amount. It's going to be based off of your highest 35 years of paying into the system. So my first request from all of you is go to ssa.gov/myaccount, either log into your account or create an account and pull your most current Social Security statement. It's a great thing to do that every single year. It gives you some incredibly good information, and it can help you start to understand the impact of filing for your Social Security benefit at different ages. Everybody's going to have what's referred to as your full retirement age. And for this example, it's 67. For everybody on the call, it's in between the time you turn 66 up until the time you turn 67. It's going to be based on the year that you were born. So if we're going to use 67 as a full retirement age today, and for our example today, and when you're looking at full retirement age, what that means is that's when you will have access to 100% of the Social Security benefit you've earned for yourself. If you want to file before that point in time, like I said, as early as when you turn 62, you are permanently reducing the benefit you're entitled to from Social Security. And like I said, that is a permanent reduction. If you want to wait past your full retirement age, 68, 69, 70, you get bonus credit for wedding. You get a simple 8% credit on top of the benefit you've earned for yourself every year up until the time you turn 70. So you can actually receive 24% more than the benefit you've earned for yourself. Now, I get questions all the time. Does it really matter when I file for my Social Security benefit? What I want to do here is I want to compare only 2 points. Only the month you turn 62 and the month you turn 70. No points in between. We're only looking at the highest and the lowest you can expect to receive from Social Security. The difference in those 2 points is around 77 to 80% in your monthly income. So what that means is if you file at 70, you are receiving somewhere between 77 and 80% more on a monthly basis than if you would have filed at 62. If you file at 62, you are receiving 77 to 80% less than you would have at 70. Now, many times people start to think that this is where I'm telling you to wait, and that is by no means what I'm saying. Filing for Social Security is a very individual decision. There's not a very like common or easy way to file for Social Security because there are going to be a lot of different things that go into making that decision. And if we could, let's move on to the next slide. And one of the things that we have to take a look at is all the different filing situations that we are going to have to add into our decision-making process. Things like, are we a surviving spouse? Are we a spouse? If not, are we divorced? Are we an individual? Is the only benefit that we have access to our own? Do we have dependent children? And here I just want to voice over, unfortunately, so I live in Ohio, and unfortunately there's a relatively large trend right now of grandparents becoming guardians for their grandchildren. And obviously many of these grandparents are on Social Security. There's actually a benefit for those children as long as those grandparents are the guardians. And it is something that many times people don't understand, but this is something that Social Security does provide for. Those that become disabled, there's a benefit there, and then there's government employees. And what I want to do here in the next slide is I want to just give you a quick rundown on some things that have changed for government employees. Now, I want to define what I mean by government employees because it's not every person that works for the government. It's people that have worked for the either, it doesn't matter what level of government. It doesn't matter if it's state, federal, county, any of it. If you've worked in a job where you have earned a government pension, but in that job did not pay into Social Security, so you were not funding your own Social Security benefit, in the past, you could be impacted. Social Security benefits that you're entitled to could have and would have been impacted by two different provisions. There's the government pension offset, which is a benefit that you would have been receiving from a spousal benefit, a divorced spousal benefit, or a surviving spousal benefit. This is where somebody else has earned a benefit that you're entitled to. The second is windfall elimination provision. This is where you've, in a different job, worked and paid into Social Security. And you have your government pension within that government job did not pay into Social Security. You had your own other job where you did pay into Social Security, and this is where your own Social Security benefit would have been impacted. Now, as of December 5th of this year, President Biden signed into law. It's the Social Security Fairness Act, also referred to as HR 82, and that abolishes government pension offset and windfall elimination provision. This abolishes them going all the way back to the beginning of 2024. So basically, the first paycheck, the first Social Security payment from 2024 January, that was impacted. And so retroactive payments for people that were on Social Security but were impacted by government pension offset or windfall elimination provision, all of that is being made whole. So retroactive payments are coming out, and many of them have been made already. So it doesn't matter which of the situations you fall into. If we could, let's go on to the next slide, and then we'll pretty quickly move on to the next one. We have a tool here at Nationwide. There's no charge for you to utilize this. This is a tool that you all have access to, and it will help you be able to understand options for yourself filing for Social Security. So if we could, let's move on to the next slide. What you're going to see here is we will give you a comparison of different strategies filing at different ages, no matter what situation you're in. Individual, part of a married couple, divorced, surviving spouse, government employee. Does not matter what any of those situations are, or if you have multiple situations that you're dealing with, we'll give you a rundown on different options as filing at different ages and different ways. But if we could, let's go on to the next slide, because this is where, when you're looking at everything, if you go back to where I started, where we're building that three-legged stool, we're building our Social Security, we're building our pension, and we're creating our own personal savings. When we're doing that, this little chart here will show you those dark blue lines coming up from the bottom. That is the guaranteed income stream that you can expect to receive from Social Security. With a pension, we would add in another set of lines on top of those dark blue lines for the pension that you would have in there, because those are guaranteed income sources. The silver line that starts low and swoops up as it goes left to right is the income need that, in this example, this couple is telling us that they need to have or want to have. The gold line is after the first person passes away. And so we're having a reduction in Social Security benefit. Most likely, if there's a pension, there would be a reduction in pension. And then there's going to be a reduction in the income needs. What we're looking at here is the gap, because the gap is the most important thing when we're looking at retirement. What do we need to generate on top of what we already have from guaranteed income sources like Social Security and pension? That gap becomes very, very vital. And ultimately, over the next two presenters that you're going to have, we're going to talk about how you can build that pension and understand what you're going to receive there, and then also how you can use your defined contribution plan to create that personal savings. If we could go on to my last slide, what I have here is the way you would run this report is a one-page fact finder. It is front and back. We can get you a copy of this, and we have a center of people at Nationwide that will run the reports for you and email you out your copy of the report. Again, this is all complimentary, and it does take us anywhere from about 3 to 5 business days on the average to run one of these reports. They are very detailed, but we would be very happy to do this for you. So please take us up on that. Now, what I'd like to do now is, I believe it's Gary that's going to be coming in from the pension fund.
Yes, thanks, David.
Wonderful. Gary, please take it away.
All right, thank you, and welcome everyone. Our opening slide here, the main thing I want to point out in the bottom left corner, you can see our phone number. If and when you want to talk to us about your individual account, please call our phone number 312-603-1200. We have a phone tree, but if you press 6, that'll take you to the retirement counselor. So questions about your account, questions about what your individual retirement looks like, that's where you want to go. I'm going to speak at this at a high level, what the benefits are, but that's where you want to go for your individual inquiries. Also, our website's there, and that will reiterate some of the information I'm going to give you today. You can go forward 2 slides, Michelle. This is the retirement board. We are a separate governmental agency. We are not directly part of Cook County. There are 2 appointed trustees on our retirement board, but there are 7 elected trustees on the retirement board. So every October there's an election. We encourage everyone to vote and potentially run for a trustee position if that's something you're interested in doing. Go ahead to the next slide. We are a $13 billion public pension fund. That is the money that's there to pay your benefits eventually. There are a little over 20,000 retiree annuitants and a little over 18,000 active members. I assume everyone on this call is probably an active employee member at this point, earning a salary, participating with contributions into the fund. We are governed by state law, and we administer benefits in accordance with state law. Go ahead to the next slide. We are funded, that $13 billion we have is funded by employee contributions out of your paycheck, levy money from the employer, and investment income. Over the past decade, we've gotten about $1.5 billion of employee contributions, about $5 billion from the employer. So Cook County is contributing a significant amount to this pension, and we've earned $8 billion in investments over the last 10 years. So the main source of income is actually the investment return on that money that we have. Go ahead to the next slide. We're going to go through some of the employee benefits. This is just to give you an idea, but there are also disability, non-retirement benefits here, disability benefits. So if you get hurt either at work or at home, there are two different disability benefits. If you get injured, you should always contact the pension fund to apply for benefits. If you get hurt at work, you probably will file a workers' comp claim, but you also need to contact us to make sure you're getting pension credit while you're off on work-related injury. For anyone who separates from employment before they qualify for a pension, there is a refund. You are guaranteed the money that's in your account, the contribution you make, that's your money. The interest that it earns is your money. You are able to get that money back if you don't qualify for retirement. Go ahead to the next slide. And the next one. If you are planning to retire, we recommend you contact us 60 to 90 days in advance. More so, even further in advance if you want to know more information about what your account is. So if you're thinking about retiring, you probably want to call us about a year in advance to get a heads up of what you might be entitled to. We can give you those numbers. We can give you those numbers further in advance. But as you get closer to retirement, the numbers are going to get more accurate as we know what your salaries actually are for the years leading up to retirement. We will advise you with the costs associated with retirement. The biggest one is the cost of health insurance if you need health insurance after you retire, and I'll get into that a bit later. And be advised that it does take 2 to 3 months to get your first pension check. So if you retire December 31st, you're going to get your last paycheck in January. You're going to get your first check from us usually in March, sometimes April if it's reciprocal. So it can take longer, and just to be prepared for that time frame. You won't lose out on any money. When we get you your first check in March, it's going to be for January, February, or March, but there's some processing time. Go ahead to the next slide. So there are 2 tiers of benefits, Tier 1 and Tier 2. I'm going to get into some examples of both of these later, but just to differentiate, the biggest difference between Tier 1 and Tier 2 is the retirement age. You can see on the slide that Tier 1 employee can retire as early as age 50, where a Tier 2 employee can't retire until age 62. What we call the normal retirement age for a Tier 1 employee is age 60 or 30 years of service. For a Tier 2 employee, it is age 67. Final average salaries is a bit basis for your pension is a little bit longer for Tier 2. The salary caps, which don't apply to many people, are different. And then the COLA, the cost of living increases after retirement, they are 3% for Tier 1. They are capped for Tier 2 at 3% or CPI. So it can't be more than 3%. But if CPI is only 1%, then Tier 2 is only going to get a 1% cost of living increase. Go ahead to the next slide. This is the summary of the Tier 1 benefits. I'm going to go into some examples of this, so we'll just go forward to the next slide. All right, so this is just 2 simple examples, Scenario 1 and Scenario 2. Scenario 1 is someone retiring with 10 years of service. Scenario 2 is 30 years of service. In these examples, both individuals are age 60, so they're entitled to the full, they're not going to receive an age penalty because they're at age 60. It's more or less basic math. 10 years of service at 2.4% per year gets you 24% of your salary. On this example of $3,000 per month salary, the pension's $720 a month. On example 2, where it's 30 years of service, 30 years times 2.4% per year gets you a 72% basis, and that's 3 times as much because you work 3 times as long, and that pension's $2,160 per month. Go ahead to the next slide. This is a slide I like more. So this kind of shows the difference between an example of someone who started at age 35 with Cook County, Tier 1 employee, 20 years of service, and they're getting to age 55. They're thinking about retiring. They're trying to figure out if they can afford to retire. And so these two examples are the kind of the same ends of the spectrum that David was talking about, retiring at age 55 or working 5 more years and retiring at age 60. So in example 1, employee decided to retire at age 55. They worked 20 years. That 20 years got them 48%. However, because they're only age 55, they're only going to receive 70% of that benefit. Similar to Social Security, it's reduced, and that math gets them about $1,000 a month at age 55. In scenario 2, that person decides to work the extra 5 years, and you can see the final average salary basis is higher. They got some raises. The 25 years gets them 60% as opposed to the 48% in the first example. And there's no age penalty, so they're getting 100% of that benefit. And instead of $1,000 a month, they're at $2,000 a month just for working that last 5 years. And that is a point of reference. Not everyone's going to be exactly double, but it's going to be right around twice as much if you work those last 5 years. So you go from, in this example, 1,000 to 2,000, but it could be that you're going from 3,000 a month to 6,000 a month, depending on your salary situation. Go ahead to the next slide. This tier 2 example is identical. I put this here as point of reference for tier 2 employees. The only difference in this example is instead of us using age 55 and age 60, is that we're using age 62 and age 67 because you cannot retire before age 62 for the tier 2. You cannot start collecting your pension before age 62. So in this example, the numbers are the same, but we're talking about different ages. So if you started at age 42 as a tier 2 employee, you work 20 years to 62, you're going to get that $1,000 a month. If you go to age 67 with 25 years, you're going to be about double that. You can go ahead to the next slide. For those of you who've been around for a while, you may have contributed to the optional plan. The optional plan was terminated by state law in 2005. So if you contributed before 2005, there was the ability to purchase an additional 1% of contributions, additional 3% of contributions, get an additional 1% of salary towards your pension. And we have a couple examples, an example of how that math works on the next slide. Go ahead, Michelle. So again, similar scenarios, two people working, both had 20 years of service. One had 4 years in the optional plan, one had 15 years in the optional plan. That those additional years in the optional plan just add additional percentage. They don't add years of service. You can see the 4 years adds 4%, the 15 years adds 15%. And the math here, they went from $1,500 a month to almost $1,900 a month because they had additional optional credit. Next slide, please. There are some refunds payable upon separation from employment. So the lump sum refund, I already hit on, that's your contribution. Someone who separates from employment with less than 10 years of service is eligible for a refund of contributions. That is all the contributions to the account with the interest earned. If you are working less than 10 years, you would be eligible for that. The rest of these are post-retirement refunds. The more or less in order of how common they are. The refund for no spouse. So some of your contribution that you are making in your paycheck is to fund a potential surviving spouse annuity. And we're going to get into later what that benefit would be if you are married at the time of retirement. But if you're not married at the time of retirement, you would presumably not have a surviving spouse upon your death. So you will get a refund of those contributions. at the time of retirement with your first retirement check. The third type of refund here is the optional overpayment. We just talked about the optional plan. If you were in the optional plan, but you do not need all your optional contributions for reasons of having already being at 80%, you will get a refund of the optional contributions. Error and deduction refund are usually small amounts due to over contributing, usually errors in payroll, but possibly an audit of disability payments, things like that. Occasionally, it's that you owe us money. We reconcile that at the time of retirement. The last two are post-death refund benefits. Anyone who, as an employee or retiree, passes away, their account is eligible for a $1,000 death benefit. We talked about those contributions that you're making on your account. So if you currently have an account balance of $80,000 as an employee and you pass away and you're not married, your beneficiaries are entitled to that $80,000. After you retire, if you do not collect that $80,000 in full, that was your money. So if you retire, you only live a few years, you collect $60,000 in pension, but you had an $80,000 balance, that other $20,000 is payable to your beneficiaries. We have everyone fill out a beneficiary form at the time of retirement, but if you don't have a beneficiary form on file, it's always a good idea to complete a beneficiary form. You can find a beneficiary form on our website. It's always a good idea to keep your beneficiaries up to date. Those beneficiaries, the number one beneficiary on your account is always your legal spouse. Your legal spouse, by state law, is your primary beneficiary. But if you don't have a spouse, then it is even more important to have a beneficiary form filled out. Go ahead to the next slide. There are some types of service that you can purchase to increase your service. Probably the two most common at this point are refund repayment and military service for active employees. Those are the most common payments you are able to make. So if you had active duty military service, you can purchase up to 2 years of that military service towards your Cook County service credit, and that would go to increase your retirement benefit. If you do qualify for that, we need a copy of your DD-214 form. We would then send you out the cost to repay, generally with a letter that shows, hey, if you pay for these 2 years or however much military time you have, this is how much would increase your pension. So it might cost you $15,000 to purchase 2 years, but then you'd get a corresponding estimate showing you that might increase your pension by a few $100s a month. So you can decide whether or not it's worth it. Similarly, here you see a refund repayment. So if you previously worked for Cook County, back in the 1990s, you pulled down that full refund that we talked about previously, you are eligible to pay back that refund and reestablish that service. A less common type of service to purchase here, especially now since it's generally only for employees who worked prior to 1984, is former service. At that time, there was a period of time where you went in non-contributor status for your first year of employment, and your employees would be eligible to purchase that time. At the time of retirement, you are eligible to purchase any unused sick time you have on the books. I'll go through sick time and vacation time together. Vacation time is something that you will not purchase. Vacation time is paid out to you at the time of retirement. So if you retire and you have 20 days of vacation time, Cook County, your employer, is going to pay you those 20 days. They are going to withhold your pension contribution, 8.5% of your salary from that vacation payment. They're going to transmit it to us, and we are automatically going to credit you with 20 days of service, which will generally add a month of service to your credit. And that's all an automatic process, nothing you have to pay for with a personal check or anything like that. It has been paid through your normal payroll process. Sick time, on the other hand, the employer is not going to pay you. You are eligible to purchase those days. So if you have another 20 days of sick time, you can write us a check for the 8.5% contribution that would normally come out of those 20 days and buy a month or however many days you have. Generally, it's about 22 days per month of credit. So if you have 88 days of sick time on the books when you retire, you can buy 4 months of service. A lot of employees will use that to move up their retirement date. If you're one of these people, one of these employees who is shooting for 30 years of service, you can retire with your 30 years of service, and you want to move that date up a few months, save your sick time, you can purchase that and move up your retirement date. The final service listed here is reciprocal service. I'm going to go through on the next couple slides with what reciprocal service is, but reciprocal service can be linked to your Cook County service. Other public service in Illinois can be linked to your Cook County pension service. And we'll go ahead to the next slide. We'll look at that. This is a bit out of order. First, we're going to talk about the cost of living increases for retirement. We talked about the COLAs earlier, but this is the example of how the COLA kicks in. So for a Tier 1 employee, the COLA is 3% every year. You can see here at the bottom the examples of when the COLA takes place. But what I'm going to hit first is that the initial COLA will occur on the January 1st following your 60th birthday, or the January 1st following your 1-year anniversary of retirement. This depends on how old you are when you retire and if you have 30 years of service. So if you retire in one of those previous examples at age 55 with 20 years of service, you will not get a COLA until the January 1st following your 60th birthday. However, if you retire at age 55 with 30 years of service, you will get the COLA on the January 1st following your 1-year anniversary of retirement. And that's a lot of words. That's why we put these examples at the bottom here. So if you retire after age 60 or with more than 30 years of service and you are Tier 1, if you look at the examples here, retirement date December 31, 2023, your annuity begins January 1, 2024. The 1-year anniversary of that is January 1, 2025. That is when your COLA would begin. Similarly, if you decide, you know what, I'm gonna defer my retirement a couple weeks, I'm gonna retire in January 2024. Now your annuity begins February 1, 2024. The 1-year anniversary of that is February 1, 2025. And you will see that COLA begins January 1, 2026, because that's the next January 1. So if you are in this situation where you're over 60, more than 30 years of service, generally speaking, you do not want to retire early in the year. You're better off going at the end of December. That's why when you see a lot of your coworkers retiring in November and December, that is why they're better off retiring towards the end of the year rather than the beginning of the year. That only applies to these Tier 1 employees who have 30 years of service or over age 60. Next slide, please. Now back to these reciprocal funds we talked about. So you can combine your Cook County employment with any prior or future employment you'll have with any of these other agencies. Basically, any public employment in the state of Illinois or the state of Illinois or a local government in the state of Illinois qualifies. Federal employment does not qualify. Notably excluded from this is employment for police and fire funds. For whatever reason, when state law was written, they did not include the police and fire funds in this, but you can see here that the top few are City of Chicago agencies. So if you work for the City of Chicago, you're covered by one of those agencies. If you work for the state of Illinois, you are covered in some of these. If you were a public school teacher, you're covered. If you were a state university teacher, you're covered. And then finally, that bottom left is a common one. The Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund basically covers all local governments in the state of Illinois. The village of Evanston, DuPage County, if you had employment for those employers, you would have participated with that IMRF fund. And if you are going for 30 years of service and you worked 3 years as a teacher in the 1990s, and now you get into your 27 years with Cook County, you can combine that to get your 30-year pension and get your what we consider normal retirement without an age penalty. Go ahead to the next slide. The surviving spouse annuity. So back to this for those of you who are married when you retire or heaven forbid, pass away as an employee but have a spouse, your spouse will be eligible for a pension for the rest of their life. There are a number of different formulas that apply. Generally speaking, if you pass away after retirement, your spouse will end up receiving 65% of what you were receiving when you passed away. There's also a 10% minimum for shorter term employees for the spouse, 10% of final salary. Go to the next slide. Also, for employees who pass away, if they have children under the age of 18, those children will get a pension of 10% of salary until the child turns age 18. Next slide, please. Health insurance. Health insurance, I talked about at the beginning. And again, when you get close to retirement, call us and we will talk you through how much your health insurance will be if you're planning to take health insurance through the retirement fund. We offer health insurance. That health insurance is subsidized, but it is expensive. You know, a population that runs from early 50s to age 80 and older is an expensive population to cover. And because of that, the insurance is expensive. So if you retire before you're Medicare eligible before age 65 generally, the current cost of the lower cost health insurance is about $940 a month. That is monthly for one person. If you are married and you also want to cover your spouse, then you're going to double that coverage. It's going to be over $1,800 a month. The employer does offer you COBRA to continue their coverage if you want, but those costs are also expensive. You'll be paying one way or another for health insurance. Obviously, if you have a spouse working somewhere else and you can get on their insurance as a dependent of an employee, that's often your best way to go. But insurance is expensive. Go to the next slide. We offer two plans. I talked about the cheaper plan is the Choice plan. Choice Plus is more expensive. It runs about $1,100 a month. Our counselors and our health benefits experts will go through those plans with you at the time of retirement. The costs change every year. The plans have been pretty consistent, but they are also subject to change. The plans we offer do include prescription drug coverage, so that's included in the cost. The thing to keep in mind is when you turn 65, Medicare kicks in. That is when your health insurance costs will go way down. So if you retire at age 60, you will only be paying that expensive health insurance for 5 years until Medicare kicks in, at which point the costs go way down. The supplemental coverage we offer runs between $200 to $250 a month as opposed to that $900 a month. You also have to pay for Medicare at that time, which runs another $200 or so per month. But even in total, you're cutting your health insurance costs in half once you get to age 65. Next slide. The other deduction from your pension will be federal tax. The pension is federally taxable income. State of Illinois does not tax your retirement income. Federal tax is different, obviously, for everyone, depending on what your other earnings are, and we can go through that with you. But depending on where you are, lower salary and the end of the spectrum, probably assume you're in the 10% range for federal income tax. Higher end of the spectrum, maybe 20%. Most people fall somewhere in between, but expect that coming out when you retire. Go to the next slide. So David talked about the elimination of the windfall elimination provision. This slide no longer applies. You will get your full Social Security benefit. We don't have anything at the Cook County Pension Fund. We don't have anything to do with your Social Security. So whether or not you worked long enough to be eligible for Social Security is something you have to determine with Social Security. But they will no longer be reducing your Social Security benefit because they eliminated this provision. Go to the next slide. And I will be around to answer questions. Be answering in chat, but I'll stick around to the end of this to answer any other questions. And I'll turn it over to the next speaker at this time.
Thank you so much, Gary. My name is Vanessa Gonzalez, and I am a senior retirement specialist with your nationwide Cook County Deferred Compensation Plan. So, as you all have heard, fully maxing out on your pension means that you will receive 80% of your current income in retirement, right? So, next slide, please. So it is up to you to bridge that income gap. And different ways that you can bridge that income gap is going to be via a traditional IRA or a Roth IRA, as well as other employer sponsor plans such as a 401k, a 403b, and a 457b plan, which is your Cook County Deferred Compensation Plan. Next slide, please. So this plan is made specifically for you all public sector employees. One of the major benefits of your deferred compensation plan is the fact that your pre-tax contributions, meaning the contributions that you put in before taxes, there is never a 10% penalty to pull your money out once you retire or leave employment with Cook County. As a matter of fact, this is the only retirement account that does not have that age restriction of 59 and a half. So again, that's just another benefit for you all being a public sector employee with Cook County. Next slide, please. And then we do have our partners, you do have a personal retirement consultant, which they are able to assist you with healthcare costs, social security income analysis, your overall retirement income analysis. They also do have other financial products and services, and that is completely free to you just by being a participant with the Cook County Deferred Compensation Plan. You can definitely give them a call to schedule an appointment at 866-975-6363, or you can email them at investnw@nationwide.com. And again, this is completely free to you. Next slide. So if you are planning to retire soon, right? The IRS does have what's called catch up. There are three different types of catch up. So the first one is called the age 50 plus catch up. That just means that anyone who is the age of 50 and older, the IRS increased that contribution limit, which I will go over in the next slide. Okay, so you do not have to wait till your birthday month too. So I definitely want to point that out. So if your birthday is December of this year, you are able to utilize that catch-up contribution limits for that 50 plus catch-up that year that you turn 50. The IRS did add a new catch up for anyone the age of 60 through 63, and then a special 457 catch up, also known as a 3-year catch up. You do have to qualify for that, and I'll go over the limits in a few seconds. Next slide, please. So the regular limit, this is going to be the contribution limit that is set by the IRS, and this is on an annual basis. So the regular limit is going to be 23,500. Everyone is able to contribute up to that amount, right? If we break that down into 26 pay periods, that's going to be $904 per paycheck. Okay, you're not required to do that amount, but that's just the amount that it would take in order for you to fully max out within that 26 pay period with Cook County. And then once you reach the age of 50, the year that you turn 50, that limit does increase to 31,000 for the year, which breaks down to 1193 per paycheck. And then this is the new catch-up limit that was set by the IRS for this year, 2025. Anyone the age of 60 and 63, that contribution limit bumps up a tad bit to $34,750 annually, which averages about $1,337 per paycheck if you would like to max out. And then also, last but not least, we have the special 3-year catch-up. That is going to be double the regular limit, which is 47,000 for the year. The average per paycheck would be $1,808. Do keep in mind that all of these limits are applied on a calendar year basis. Any rollovers that you all decide to process, meaning money moved over from one financial company to your deferred compensation plan, that does not count towards your contribution limits. And the IRS does have the right to change these limits anytime for that following year. Next slide, please. So this is an example of a 3-year catch-up. I do want to point out that you do have to qualify to do this 3-year catch-up. There are certain criteria that you have to have in order to take advantage of it. You would contact us here at Nationwide so that we can let you know if you do qualify. But in this example here, a participant is the age of 47 and they have 27 years of service, right? Which means that they are eligible to do that 3-year catch-up because they contacted us and we went ahead and gave them the green light, right? So that means that they are able to contribute $47,000 for 3 consecutive years. So for the year 2025, 2026, and 2027, they are able to contribute that 3-year catch-up, 47,000. And then once that 3-year catch-up ends, then we would bring down that contribution limit to what's that 50 plus catch up, right? So that's going to be the 31,000 for the year. Do keep in mind that the 3-year catch up can only be done once in your career. You are able to change your contribution amounts anytime. However, if you don't fully take advantage of that catch up, we won't be able to make up for it any other years. Okay. And then again, this is called the 3-year catch-up. And go ahead with the next slide, please. Thank you. And then if you have any time that's due to you from Cook County, you are able to roll that over into your deferred compensation plan. It is a pretty simple process. The first step is to contact us here at Nationwide so that we can assist you with completing that buyout form. It is going to be subject to annual contributions limits, the ones that I went over on the previous slides. And then we are able to accept deferrals up to the later of the end of the calendar year or 2.5 months after your retirement. But those employees that are planning to retire within 2.5 months at the end of the year, they may most likely see their buyouts processed that next calendar year. So for example, if you decide to retire in December and you process that buyout with us, the Cook County most likely would not process that until next year, which would be 2026. Nationwide does not determine how much you receive from these buyout checks. That is all processed through Cook County. It is our job to process that for you so that we can defer it into your deferred compensation plan. Next slide, please. This is an example of the time due buyout. So this participant plans on retiring December 17 of this year, and this participant specifically is not married. So they contacted us stating that they had some hours that's owed to them from the county, such as any vacation, furlough, comp time. And then also at that time, since they are not married, as Gary went over, a spousal annuity refund is owed to this participant specifically. In this example, we used $50,000. That's not to say that that's going to be your amount because it is contingent on based off years of service and age and salary. But in this example here, we are able to accept that that spousal annuity refund, that comes in as a rollover. So it does not count towards that contribution limit, which means we are able to accept up to a total of $97,000. And again, this will most likely get processed that following year in 2026. Any dollar amount that's owed over that contribution limit, which is the 47,000 in this case, that difference will be made payable to you, but we are only able to accept up to that 47,000 if you process the buyout and utilize that 3-year catch up. And again, that 50,000 spousal annuity refund gets it counts towards as a rollover. You can contact us so that we can assist you with that paperwork if you prefer to roll over your spousal annuity refund as well. Next slide, please. And if you have other retirement accounts with any previous employer, such as a traditional IRA, a 401k, a 403b, even your spousal annuity check, right? You are able to roll over those monies over into your deferred compensation plan. It's a pretty simple process. The first step is to complete a form with us. So you would contact us and then you would just sign off on a form that just allows us to accept your money outside of Nationwide. The second step is that we will work with you to contact that other provider, because sometimes they do require their own paperwork, or sometimes they do take our rollover request right over the phone. But either way, we will help you every step of the way. And then one of the major benefits of processing those rollovers, one, it does not count as a taxable event since it's going from one company to the next. Two, it just is here to kind of help simplify your life because you'll have one statement. And then most importantly, compounding interest. That just means that you are allowing your overall retirement nest egg to grow much quicker for you long term by combining those assets, because you're not able to contribute into those other retirement accounts because you're not employed with them and you're currently contributing into this plan. That's just going to allow that compounding interest to be much more powerful. Next slide, please. So you've saved all this money for retirement, right? So what are my payout options, Vanessa? So great question. Your 3 basic payout options, one of them is going to be a lump sum. Lump sum just means that you want to take your full account balance. Now, I do want to highlight that you are not required to take all of your money out. However, if you did, you do have that option, but we are required for any pre-tax contributions, we are required by the IRS to withhold 20% for federal tax. There's no state tax in the state of Illinois, and there is no penalty regardless of your age for any pre-tax contributions. The second option is going to be partial lump sum. So the partial just means that you want to take a one-time payout. For example, if your account balance is $100,000 and you would like to take out $10,000, that's considered a partial lump sum. You take out that $10,000, 20% will be withheld for federal tax, no state tax, and then you let the remaining balance sit in your account and it will still grow for you as long as it's invested, right? And then last but not least type of payout option is your systematic withdrawal. The systematic withdrawal is going to be where you get to decide on a specific dollar amount that you would like to take out either monthly, quarterly, semi-annual, or annually. You can stop or change the amount anytime. So these are your 3 payout options. Next slide, please. Now, once you reach the age of 73, that means that the IRS does require you to take out what's called the required minimum distribution, also known as the RMD. Again, that's the year that you turn 73. Some financial institutions do require that you calculate your own RMD, that amount that you have to take out. However, as long as you are enrolled with your deferred compensation plan, you still have your account open here with us, Nationwide actually calculates that for you. It is a very tricky formula, but we will actually calculate that amount for you and let you know exactly how much you have to take out to the penny. Okay. We would send you a email. We would send you letters telling you no, to inform you how much you have to take out if you are enjoying retirement, which you very much should, right? But if you are enjoying retirement and you completely ignore us, we will send you the money anyway, only because we don't want you to get in trouble by the IRS. Okay. Next slide, please. Will you have enough money to last through retirement? So that is a very important question. There are three major costs in retirement. The first one is going to be inflation. So we've seen that recently with the egg prices, right? And just, just everything is just much more expensive, right? Things that we buy on a daily basis, right? And then the second major cost is going to be healthcare costs. And so that can range depending on, your family size and also based off your age too. So that can be very expensive as well. And then the last but not least is longevity. People are simply outliving their retirement savings. If you're just dependent on just your pension or, a little bit of Social Security, but the inflation and healthcare costs may kind of weigh in on that cost. This is why it's so important to save as much as you can via your deferred compensation plan, which can help you through your retirement with any of these major costs. Next slide, please. So once you do retire, your account can remain open. You still have options to the different funding options that we have available. And if you are in that pro account, which is a management service, you are still able to take advantage of having your account professionally managed as well. So once we do receive confirmation of your retirement date that is sent directly from Cook County, do keep in mind that once you do retire, it can take a while for your name to clear their payroll. So it does range anywhere between 4 to 8 weeks. So kind of prepare yourself closer to retirement to have money saved for about 1 to 2 months after your official retirement date. And then your pre-tax contributions are fully taxable. I know we do have the Roth contributions now, right? So with the Roth contributions, that is those funds, the profits would not be taxable as long as you met two requirements. The first one is that Roth has to be open for at least 5 years. And you have to be the age of 59 and a half in order for those profits to be tax free. But anything pre-tax is going to be fully taxable, and we are required to withhold that 20% for federal tax. And then the pre-tax portion, again, does not have any penalty regardless of your age. There's never a 10% penalty for your pre-tax withdrawals. Next slide, please. So even in retirement, you are able to allow your money to grow for you, and it is up to you to just determine what kind of investor are you. We do have three different approaches. The first one is going to be do it myself. That's where you simply choose your own funds. The second is going to be help me do it. That's where we have a list of target date funds where you choose one fund based off the year that you plan to retire. And as it gets closer to that year, it starts to take less risk. And then last but not least, we have the do it for me option. That's where the pro account can come in. That is optional, but that's where you are having your account professionally managed with pro account, and it's customized to you specifically. So you would answer 5 questions that helps us determine what your comfort level is, and then your account can be professionally managed. There is a management cost for that, and that's going to be 0.45% annually. And then do keep in mind that whichever route you take, you can always switch it up anytime. So if you decided to do it yourself and would prefer a target date fund, you can always make those changes even in retirement. Next slide, please. And then one of the my favorite tools that we have is called My Income and Retirement Planner. This is a tool completely free to use, which is on our website, cookcountydc.com. This is where you would answer a few questions and it will estimate your healthcare costs, your chance of success as far as you achieving your retirement goals. You can put in what if scenarios, and then review and compare your withdrawal strategies. So again, this tool is completely free, and you can locate that at www.cookcountydc.com. Next slide. And then this is just our contact information. So we have many other tools available, free for you all. We do have webinars available on our website as well. So you can visit us at cookcountydc.com. So feel free to take a picture of this screen, or you can call us at 855-457-2665. We do also have a local office. It's going to be a block away from the county building at 205 West Randolph and Wells, and that's going to be on a 15th floor, 15th suite 1540. And then also feel free to scan that QR code to schedule any appointment with myself or any of my great colleagues. And I am going to turn it over to Michelle. Thank you guys.
Okay, thank you, Vanessa and Dave, as well as Gary from the Pension Fund. So we've now concluded the recording portion of this webinar. So we're going to move into the live Q&A session. Again, this portion will not be recorded. So feel free to submit any of your questions that you may have into the chat. And I see that we have been getting some questions.